Welcome to the chaos sector. We've conducted a thorough investigation into the Idaho murders. We will wait for the verdict to give our analysis. Now, there was another case that made national headlines last year, and it was very mysterious. The Shanquella Robinson case sparked a national outcry for justice, as she was found deceased in a hotel during a vacation with her friends. Unlike the Idaho murder investigation, there hasn't been anyone arrested to this point, which has essentially made it a cold case. But, let's break it down a bit. The problem with this case is there is video footage released of individuals attacking Shanquella in the hotel. The autopsy report states she suffered a broken neck and a cracked spine. Initially, there was an assumption she died from alcohol poison. The glaring problem here is that there are individuals seen on video attacking her, which leads to them being potential suspects in her death, right? Yet, no one has been brought up on charges for murder, not even assault. The parents of Shanquella state that, quote, they did that to their daughter, unquote. This statement indicates that the parents believe her peers, who she went on vacation with, are responsible for her death, right? But, it is stated in a very elusive manner, as they do not directly state the peers are responsible for the death. And another mysterious aspect is the parents have never pressed charges on those peers for assaulting their daughter. What in the world? If your daughter is seen in video footage being assaulted, and you know it's her peers, why wouldn't you press charges on them? Clearly there is malicious intent, because they recorded the assault, right? Alluding to them being the killers does not do Shanquella justice, because you are essentially protecting those peers. It's obvious to see, because any normal parent would have not only pressed charges, but those charges would also lead to those peers being questioned about her death. This does not look good for the parents, in my opinion. Yet, despite what the parents may or may not believe, the authorities have video footage of those peers attacking Shanquella, right? So, why haven't they tracked them down, the same way the authorities tracked down Bryan Kohberger? Interesting, isn't it? I noticed the field reporters for news stations literally attempted to contact the peers as they arrived at their homes. Some have even traveled to Mexico, attempting to gain information on Shanquella's death. But the FBI, detectives, and local authorities never attempted to track them down? In the video, there is a young lady assaulting Shanquella while another individual is recording. This means they conspired against her, because if they were truly friends, that fight would not be recorded and then uploaded to social media. Friends may have a physical altercation, but because it is being recorded, this indicates someone, or several peers, wanted to record her being attacked. The mother claims Shanquella isn't a fighter and that they jumped on her. If the mother knew Shanquella wasn't much of a fighter, then the friends definitely knew. And this is why they decided to record it. This proves that her so-called friends wanted to humiliate her by recording her assault, then uploading it to social media. The fact that they recorded it proves malicious intent. And with this malicious intent, there is obviously a motive linked to her death. Also, the peers left Mexico, returning to the United States, leaving a deceased friend behind? What the hell? They didn't attempt to find out what happened? If your friend dies, shouldn't there be someone to stay behind to figure out what happened? Why did they all leave? Those are not friends, those individuals must have conspired against her, and after the murder, they head back to the United States. This is quite the oddity, because if we compare both cases, Kohberger was quickly arrested, despite any real proof he was linked to those victims. The authorities ruled out anyone in the victim's circle very fast, and perhaps didn't question anyone in the neighborhood about their whereabouts, nor anyone who was associated with the victims from college. Shanquella's peers, on the other hand, are primary suspects, but have not been charged, haven't even been questioned, and have not been heard from since. There are content creators on YouTube, breaking down the peers, presenting theories that her peers set her up. Many dig into the backgrounds of those peers, and how they are the primary suspects. Even to suggest, Shanquella was sacrificed. I won't speak on those individuals, but just so everyone knows, we are not a part of a quote, YouTube investigation society. We expose anything, and anyone. Let's leave it at that. All of these individuals are investigating details of the case, but where are the authorities? Why haven't they done such work in tracking down the murderer? How can content creators determine a likely theory as to who is responsible for the death, yet the FBI and all other authorities can't put everything together? They claim there was no indication of foul play? Even with a video showing the victim being assaulted? This is bonkers, my brain has just exploded. Where are the suspects? How can authorities grab a suspect from the Idaho murders when there wasn't any real concrete proof Kohberger was the main suspect? Yet in the Shanquella case, there is literally video footage of potential suspects and perhaps the guilty parties. In other words, a suspect is pulled into Moscow, all the way from another state, and quickly brought up on murder charges. While in the Shanquella case, suspects are literally on camera attacking the victim, and no arrest was made of any person physically present? What do you make of this? Well, it's not making sense. And there has to be a cover-up. But the problem with that is whatever is being covered up leads to protecting individuals who are responsible for her death. Are we to believe the authorities would protect Shanquella's peers, while another state's authorities would go the distance in tracking down Kohberger and charging him with murder? Based on percentage of being guilty, Shanquella's peers are about 95%, while Kohberger is about 15%, at this point. Even if her peers didn't literally murder her, they obviously were there when it happened. While Kohberger hasn't been proven to physically be at that home, despite what has been claimed. Is it a fake death? Mind you, for all those who took that journey once before, there was a similar case such as this. The Kanika Jenkins case, which is eerily similar to this one. Kanika is with a group of friends, surveillance footage shows her stumbling through the hallways. She is later discovered deceased in a freezer, and no one from the party, or the hotel, was charged with murder. Shanquella is with a group of friends, video footage shows her being attacked, and yet nobody was charged with murder, or even assault. They both have one thing in common, mysterious deaths, with individuals surrounding those deaths. What does this indicate to you? Some suggest that Mexicans murdered Shanquella, and the Mexican government is protecting those individuals. Shouldn't this motivate the United States government to act faster, as an American citizen had been murdered by a Mexican citizen, and the Mexican government is protecting one of their citizens? The point, the United States government agencies are not doing their job regardless. And this narrative is clearly damage control, creating a suspect from Mexico, when obviously fellow Americans are the ones seen assaulting Shanquella. Now, there is a key dynamic to an investigation, which seems to indicate a mastermind is behind the alleged death. The United States can't prosecute a crime if the same charge has already been adjudicated in the country that has jurisdiction. Yet, the United States government can prosecute for other crimes associated with the main offense. Now what we have here is a scenario where the Mexican government is essentially responsible for an investigation, as the death occurred in their country. There is also the issue of the peers, who are the main suspects, being extradited back to Mexico to face murder charges. And this is where a few problems exist, apparently. Mexico is reported to request an American citizen to be sent back to their country to face murder charges. This diplomatic complexity raises the possibility for an American citizen to practice their constitutional rights, not to be seized and forcibly removed from the United States, to face a trial and possibly jail time on criminal charges in another country. It's hypothetical that this would happen, but it does seem logical based on there being no suspects brought about to this point. Mexico's request for that suspect has had no motion from the United States, as there is no update on what proceedings are taking place regarding extraditing suspects. If Mexico is requesting suspects be brought back to their country to face charges, why hasn't the United States obliged? They can actually prosecute for the assault of the victim, yet there hasn't been any updates on this neither. Also, the fact that Mexico is requesting that a suspect be brought back proves they have examined the video footage and have enough evidence to link those peers to Shanquella's death, right? It seems the United States is very reluctant on releasing those suspects. In addition, the father of Shanquella stated, paraphrasing, quote, "To do what they did, it seemed like a plot. They couldn't have done that over here," unquote. The phrase, "done that over here," means in the United States. And quote, "done that," is actually referring to murdering his daughter. But like mentioned, the parents allude to the peers murdering their daughter, never officially saying it publicly. Why is this so hard to say? If you believe they murdered your daughter, and you see video footage of them assaulting your daughter, why would there be any reluctance to just publicly say what you feel and know based on the video? The father suggesting that those peers wouldn't have been able to accomplish it in the United States is also a bit suspicious. If they plotted to harm and even murder Shanquella, I would assume it would be far easier in the United States, right? Unless he is referring to a murder committed in the citizen's nation, based on the law. Well, of course, they wouldn't get away with it. But it hints at something, and this is a bit disturbing. The father has to have extensive knowledge of the law, because he is aware of the complexities in trying suspects for a murder in another country. Shanquella's peers would have to know this as well, right? But why did the father make that statement? It seemed a bit unwarranted in the interview, to be honest. I'll let my colleague take it from here.
No problem. In the interview, the father explains how the peers must have plotted against Shanquella. But he also mentioned how they wouldn't have got away with it if we're in the United States. What would warrant this analysis of the peers' motives? Understand, he established the peers' plot to assault and murder his daughter, but he goes even deeper, to suggest they plotted this murder, based on knowing it would be difficult to bring them on murder charges in another country, right? And to add insult to injury, they even recorded the assault, knowing they will have to be extradited back to Mexico for murder. But the way he explained it seems to be a bit of foreshadowing. Like he knows more than what is being said. The mother also claimed that one of the male peers frequented their home, but she never named that individual. Both parents use elusive terms such as they or it to describe the peers and what the peers did. This is not by accident, it is a conscious decision to not place a name on the peers, because it would obviously depict them as suspects in the mainstream media. Once again, the media's role in these cases. Content creators on YouTube will obviously dig into it, but if the mainstream media does not acknowledge those peers on a personal level, they are essentially invisible. I guess so, because the media hasn't highlighted those peers, despite video footage of them assaulting Shanquella. Smells a bit fishy here. If they were to dig into the bios of those peers, who obviously are suspects, their identities would be nationally viewed, which places more pressure on authorities, and the FBI, to bring them in for assault charges. And soon after, being extradited back to Mexico for murder charges. So either the authorities are allowing the peers of Shanquella to avoid any questioning, and avoid being charged with assault, or it can't be a real death. We only deal with logic here. It's possible the Idaho murders are also fake, but the Shanquella Robinson case is too glaring to me, as an arrest would have been made weeks after. Compare the timeframes. Koberger was arrested months later, after his alleged vehicle was spotted in surveillance. This is how they tracked him down, by alleged surveillance footage. Yet, there is actual video footage the public has witnessed, of Shanquella being assaulted, and somehow, this hasn't been used as evidence of potential suspects in her death. How in the world does this? It's not possible. If it's not possible, then it's impossible. And if it's impossible, then it can't be real. No need to break down all of the allegations of what the peers are doing currently, what the FBI is currently doing, what alleged information, or evidence proves the peers were involved. None of that matters, because they are not sitting in the authorities' custody, awaiting a murder trial, like Koberger. They should be right along with him, right? But they aren't, so it must be fake. It's possible, and logical, that the Idaho murders are also fake. But even within this setting, you can't have one suspect grab national headlines in your hoax, and not present other suspects in the other hoax, right? Once again, individuals are seen on video assaulting Shanquella, yet apparently they have disappeared within society. There is this narrative the peers are in hiding. Not gonna save them. They called the mother, right? She stated that the peers had called her, to notify her about Shanquella. Unless all of them got rid of those cell phones, the authorities can track their locations. Just like they did with Koberger, right? The authorities tracked Koberger's movements via his cell phone, so why can't the authorities track those peers via their cell phones? All of the video footage from that night had been released on social media, even someone stated, quote, "We have our first dead body," unquote. It was depicted as a joke by one of the peers, but due to the video footage of the assault, can we suggest that they were planning to kill Shanquella? Of course. And who uploaded that? Why didn't authorities use this to track those peers? We can assume those peers still have their cell phones from that night, so simply track their phones, find their location, and arrest the person seen assaulting Shanquella. Some claim that a peer had committed suicide. This to me is damage control, attempting to push the narrative of suicide, to avoid the possibility of being brought in on charges. And this is why we don't associate ourselves with, quote, YouTube investigators. We don't investigate to get justice for anyone, we investigate to discover the truth. Social media can't get justice for anyone, that duty belongs to the authorities. Justice for Shanquella hasn't come, because the parents for some disturbing reason, did not press charges on them. The family members of the victims in the Idaho murders also lacked an emotional state, but they did engage with authorities in the investigation, and a suspect had been apprehended, who is now facing murder charges. But the family members for Shanquella haven't pressed charges on individuals, they literally witnessed attacking their daughter. Shouldn't this motivate you to carry out some form of justice by punishing them for what they did to Shanquella? Of course, but this hasn't happened. Simply speak to authorities and say you want to press charges against the individuals in the video. The first person to be charged is the male known by the parents, so you start with this person. And you also potentially get information out of him. Now this is how you get justice. But the mother criticizes the FBI for not doing their job. Really? How about you press charges on the peers for assaulting your daughter? This has been confirmed, if anything else hasn't been, right? The parents saw their daughter being attacked, they were supposed to press charges on the peers immediately. The mother claims one of the male peers was often at their home for dinner. And then she states, quote, "I never thought he could do such a thing," unquote. Do what? What are you saying here? Are you saying that male suspect conspired to have your daughter assaulted? I believe it was his voice in the background of that video egging the fight on. So if he was antagonizing the fight, instead of breaking it up as a strong male figure should do, doesn't this mean he didn't truly see Shanquella as his friend? Of course. But the mother doesn't press charges on him, nor anyone else. Justice for Shanquella. Doesn't seem like the parents care too much about justice, in my view. This is not only suspicious, it is irrational. But TMZ interviews them, and other mainstream outlets. No mention of pressing charges, despite acknowledging the peers assaulted their daughter. And even allude to them murdering her? The media never acknowledged it, never raising suspicion of the peers being suspects in her death, yet video footage is plastered right in their faces showing her being attacked. Wow, talk about damage control. If some of our viewers recall the Kenneka Jenkins case, and its conclusion, we have another double-edged sword outcome. Either the family is behind the death of Shanquella, or it wasn't real. Pick your poison. There is another common characteristic between both Kenneka Jenkins and Shanquella Robinson cases. There aren't any tears flowing down family members' faces, which is one of the telltale signs of a hoax. Shanquella's mother looks a bit detached. She appears robotic, not emotional, after losing a daughter. The father seems void of any emotion as well, like a robot speaking about human misery. While Kenneka's mother is shown appearing to be weeping uncontrollably, but if we zoom in on this photo, there are no tears whatsoever. I bet the male holding her is actually laughing behind her. This is why he avoided the camera, because he found her pretending to cry hilarious, and that would expose the hoax to everyone. Many people would suggest that the family members have cried day and night, to the point of becoming weak. That's possible, but that emotional attachment to a loved one will always come back when discussing their deaths in interviews. We have never seen these family members cry in the middle of speaking. Or the news anchor stopping the interview, due to the family member not capable of continuing out of sadness. Sorry for those who think otherwise, but we have to expose deception. We give a benefit of the doubt, but once there is a doubt of sincerity, well, you know how it goes. No need to follow up with an extensive investigation into it, we leave it where it stands. Until those peers are sitting in a courtroom, awaiting a murder trial, this will be classified as a psychological operation. This is the chaos sector.